It's the Grey Knights Codex review today. We've got the Brotherhoods, Tides, and our top 5 units from the Codex. I'm James.
I'm Scott.
And I'm Iain.
And I'm Balrock.
Okay, cue music. Grey Knights.
Yes.
What do you guys make of the new Codex?
Mortal Wound City.
It is a bit, actually, isn't it?
Very powerful, I think.
Yeah, it's strong. I think you probably need to put a bit of effort into to get them to be strong. Because I don't think it's a simple codex like the others. It's not as straightforward as some of the others. You've got to combo a lot of things and have a bit more thought about it. But yeah, overall, decent.
It's not like a plug in and play sort of faction compared to other Space Marine chapters, is it?
No. I think in general it's been a good update to them. It's made an old range feel a lot more current.
Yeah.
There are quite a lot of things in this book that I feel are just a reaction to what Space Marines, other psychic armies have got recently. But there are cool little things that are kind of unique to them now that I think are really powerful. I think the book in general is just a beautiful book. Like, the artwork is amazing. It's got all the old school and some new stuff in there.
Yeah, we won't talk about the Black Templar artwork because the Black Templar artwork where the guy's got the long neck. It's a lot better than that.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
To be fair, I didn't see that until you made note of it the other day, and then I couldn't unsee it.
I love the artwork. I mean, I always love the artwork that Games Workshop do, but Grey Knights themselves are just beautiful. I mean, I've always loved them, haven't I?
Yeah.
I used to have Demon Hunters way back in, I think it was 5th edition, when they were all lead, and I've loved them ever since.
There was a time where Grey Knights were the power players of the 40k universe, wasn't there?
Yes, definitely in 7th edition when I used to use Draigo with Paladins. Gates of Infinity was amazing.
6th edition, they just used to win every tournament?
I don't know.
I can't remember. I think it was more maybe 7th that they were a bit more powerful. Because you had invisibility that you could use, and Gates of Infinity, you could literally just deep strike across the board. And just hardly get hit and smack people about for fun, basically.
Yeah. One thing that has changed for them is their chapter tactic. It's just been reworded slightly. I actually feel like it was a little bit better last edition, but I still think it's strong now. Last edition, you'd get +1 to your psychic tests for manifesting and denying, whereas now you just get denying, you get +1.
Yeah.
But you also now get a 5+ ignore mortal wound save, which I think is really strong, especially for a psychic army.
I think that's powerful against Thousand Suns, for example, especially.
Yeah. This edition is a lot of like take a mortal wound, take 2 mortal wounds, take 3 mortal wounds. So stuff like that is starting to become. I know that like my Necrons, one of their dynasties has the same thing, like a 5+ against mortal wounds.
Well, it looks like for Grey Knights, they can not only take a lot of mortal wounds and shrug them off, but they can also dish out a lot of mortal wounds, judging on some of the stuff we've seen, which we'll talk about. I
really like how fluffy it is as well, because Grey Knights are banishing demons, basically. And their chapter tactic now, I think with the +1 to them to deny, and then they're okay against mortal wounds. I just think that makes them like anti-Psyker. And you look at Thousand Suns, they're a perfect mirror to Thousand Suns trait now. They get +1 to their psychic tests and a 5+ invulnerable, whereas these guys are getting +1 to deny and +1 against 5+ against mortal wounds.
Yeah.
So it's a kind of perfect mirror and a perfect cancel each other out, so I quite like that. Secondaries, you had something you wanted to say, Scott.
So the secondaries, most armies so far that have got a codex, they seem to have at least one that's usable in most games, but the Grey Knights ones seem kind of average to weak, if anything. You've got Destroy the Demon, which is up to 12 victory points for killing demon units, depending on like keywords like Demon Primarch and whatnot, but that's capped at 12. Also, it's completely situational. If you're not going against demons, you never take it.
Yeah, it sounds very demon specific.
Yeah.
You want something a bit less so, don't you?
Yeah, so I feel like you probably would take that if you're against demons, but obviously wouldn't if you're against anything else. So that's all right. And then you've got Teleport Assault. Gain 3 points if you're able to destroy an enemy with a unit that arrived via teleport. Now, to do that, you've got to make the charge. You've also got to kill the unit. So that is actually quite hard to achieve. You know, realistically, how many units are you going to bring in to max? You have to teleport in 5 units, and they all have to kill something in order to max out that secondary. So realistically, you probably got a deep strike in 6 or 7 units to make up for the ones that might not make the charge and the ones that might not make the kill.
Yeah.
So you're talking 7 units you deep striking in, which, I mean, are the rules you can only deep strike 50% in, is that?
As far as I'm aware, yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like that's very hard to max out. I feel like you get something from it, but if you had an unlucky game, you might not even get 2 or 3 times doing that, so you might not even get 6 or 9 points.
Well, they sound very fluffy, you
Yeah.
know, from that perspective, you know, but again, only when you're playing demons, really, to be honest. It's not really, you're not going to find much use out of it if you're not playing demons, to be honest.
Yeah.
Moving on, there are 8 Brotherhoods, and I just think it's cool that they've always been there, and now they've got unique rules.
Yeah.
Which is your favourite Brotherhood?
So, I quite like the Prescient Brethren. I think the stratagems is good. It's reroll 1s to hit and to wound, 1 CP. There are a lot of places in the Codex to get rerolls from, and this is just another one, really. Then the Psychic Power is basically another smite, but the unit has to move. So it's just a gimmicky smite, really, but still hits as hard as smite. And if you're against an army that's melee focused, then you know that's always going to pop off because it goes off on a normal move, a charge or a fallback, which is good, having it on the fallback as well. And then on top of that, the Warlord trait is it grants you access to a psychic action, and you get 1 command point if you pass it. I think it's on a roll of I think it's low. I think it's a 4 or a 5. And yeah, I think it's just all three are usable. Definitely, all 3 are good. So I'd personally pick that one.
Yeah. What about you, Ian? Which one do you like?
My favourite, personally, is the first Brotherhood, which are the Sword Bearers. They're quite vehicle orientated, but I quite like the look of it because I'm quite a fan of Nemesis Dreadknights, for example. The stratagem marked for death for 2 CP, basically use it at the start of your shooting phase, and you select 1 enemy unit within 12 inches and visible to a Sword Bearer Psyker. And until the end of the phase, each time it makes a ranged attack against that enemy unit, you add 1 to the attack's hit roll. So for me, using a normal Dreadknight to make it hit on a 2+ is quite strong. You could spam certain attacks with, like, you know, the Heavy Silencer, for example. And then also, to stack with that, you can use the Psychic Power Empiric Lodestone, which is a malediction, and it's a warp charge of 7. So if you select an enemy unit within 18 inches of the Psyker until the start of your next Psychic phase, each time, again, that vehicle unit makes a range attack against the enemy unit, you can add 1 to the attack's wound roll as well. So you can add +1 to your hit and +1 to your wound, which I think is quite powerful.
Yeah.
Again, on the Dreadknight, you know, for it to hit on a 2+, you know, you could spam Psy Cannon or Silencer shots on that, and then to wound on +1 as well. Like, it's pretty powerful. So if you use it on the Gatling Silencer for the Dreadknight, it's heavy 12, but it's strength 5, -1 AP. It's only 1 damage, but the ability to hit on a 2 with a heavy 12 gun, and also to wound pretty much most infantry units, for example, on a 2 as well, is pretty powerful, I think. The last thing is obviously the Warlord trait that you need to use with it. It's called Rights of Protection. So it's a Warlord trait, but it's a psychic power you use with that. So you select one friendly sword bearer's vehicle model within 12 inches of this Warlord, and until the start of your next psychic phase, that model has a 4+ invulnerable save. So that'd be quite good on like Land Raiders, on Storm Ravens, for example. You can buff vehicles quite well with that. All of it is you need to be quite close to not only obviously the enemy units that you're using it on, but also, you know, your own units as well. So it's quite a bit of tricky coordination there. You need to, you need to plan it quite well, but you can make, you know, quite a brutal shooting phase, for example, with this sword bearer's Brotherhood.
I think it's really cool that with Grey Knights, if you do want to go down a vehicle heavy side, you can do.
Yeah.
I think naturally you look at Grey Knights and think, oh, I really want to spam Psychers. But a lot of Space Marine players, doesn't really matter the chapter. I've noticed, like, say, like a Space Wolf players I've met before, like they've gone all tanks and dreadnoughts. And I feel like you can do that in this book really nicely now.
Yeah.
I think that's great. One I quite like the look of is the Wand Makers.
Makers.
I said the Wand Makers. It's not Harry Potter. It's Grey Knights. It's Ward Makers.
What's the wand made of, mate?
Yeah.
Has it got a unicorn hair in it? Don't think unicorns exist in the 41st millennium,
To
mate.
be honest, the way some of the models look for Grey Knights, they look out of medieval, like witches and wizards, don't they? So maybe one of them did make Harry's wand. Yeah.
I'd imagine he'd slay Harry for being a heretic psyker.
Yeah, probably. The Ward Makers, though, one of the reasons I quite like it is it's the only Brotherhood that has characters locked to it, with the main one being Grandmaster Voldus. And if you want to take Voldus, his Warlord trait is in this Brotherhood. I've always really liked the model for Voldus.
Voldus is very strong as well.
Yeah, because I think what's cool, if you want to play Voldus, you could play him and he'll be really strong. And with this Brotherhood, he'll be really strong. Yeah. The stratagem they get is that you select one of your characters and you select one psychic power that they do not know, and you replace it with one that you do. Okay. And I think that's quite nice, quite situational. Like if there's a little power you want to use at one point, you've got the option to use it there. The psychic power, if you manifest, select one enemy unit within 12 until the start of your next psychic phase, that unit is not affected by the abilities of models from its own army.
That's very strong.
Yeah, that's really powerful.
That's why you take that. Brotherhood.
Yeah. Well, I quite like the Warlord trait mainly, to be honest.
What's that?
And Voldus just knows this. Each time a psychic test is taken for this Warlord, if the result of that test was an unmodified result of 8+, and it was greater than or equal to that power's warp charge value, your opponent cannot attempt to deny that power.
That's very nice.
Yeah.
That is nice.
It means Voldus, like if you're playing against Thousand Sons, Voldus is going to have a fun time.
He makes some nice ones.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how that would interact with some of the abilities Thousand Sons now have, but I'm pretty sure like they would struggle to deal with that.
Yeah.
And it's nice because in the Thousand Sons Codex, there's a lot of ways to make them getting off their psychic powers really easily. So for Grey Knights to have the potential to do that as well, it just means if you're coming across that, then you're going to have a good.
Well, mate, let me just step in here a minute. This is a Grey Knights Codex summary here. We're not talking about the Thousand Sons. You spoke about them quite a lot. Are you on this Thousand Sons hype at the moment, mate?
They go hand in hand, though. That's the thing.
I'm trying to make the point.
Well, that's heretical, that, mate.
That I do feel like this book can stand up to Thousand Sons in terms of psychic.
Yes.
Yeah, not as well as my Space Wolves will stand up to Thousand Sons, though, let's be honest.
I think these would fare better.
I think in psychic phase, your Space Wolves will be crying, mate.
Howls in pain.
Yeah.
I think in general, the Brotherhoods all look cool.
I think we picked there's 8 in there. We picked probably the strongest 3, I'd say.
Yeah. Looking at Tides, this was something they did get in Ritual of the Damned. And it's kind of their version of
Doctrines,
for the Space Marines, but kind of focuses a little bit more on rather than per turn, it's kind of what you want to make dominant.
So with tides, unlike doctrines, it's not at the start of your round, it's in your psychic phase. So any tide that will benefit movement is useless because you've just had your movement phase and you're now on your psychic phase.
Yeah.
So there's this tide of celerity, which gives you advanced bonuses. And I feel like that's the one you start with at the start of your game. And just the second you get a psychic phase, you're going to want to switch to something else. You're probably going to... The one you switch to is probably the one you'll stay with for the rest of the game, I imagine. And the best one seems to be the Tide of Convergence, which gives melee and ranged attacks. You get mortal wound on the roll of a 6, which also works well with a lot of warlord traits we've seen.
Yeah.
So is it like an auto take, or is it just the best out of them? Is there anything that's any good?
Well, I feel like out of I think there's 5.
Yeah, there's 5.
Out of the 5, one of them is a demon one, so it's completely situational. And 2 of them you'd only really use at the start, because one of them is the one I mentioned where it's a roll of a 1 to 2 is a 3 on advance, and charge rolls. And then there's also Tide of Shadows, which is anything beyond 12 inches away is light cover.
Yeah, it's not amazing considering there's a lot better things to choose from.
I feel you'd start with those 2 and then go on to Tide of Convergence, so your damage output is a lot higher, and you're probably going to get more from that than the slight movement bonus and the light cover bonus, because you're probably going to be up in the face anyway. So
it doesn't matter about movement as much, because obviously pretty much everything has deep strike anyway, so you can already get to where you want to be straight off the bat, pretty much.
Yeah. So when it comes to it, it's either Tide of Celerity or Tide of Shadows, and then your first turn psychic phase, you go in Tide of Convergence, and you might stay on that for the rest of the game, in my opinion.
A new thing that I've really, really read a lot on since it came out that I really like the look of is the wisdoms of the Prognosticars. So what we're finding in a lot of codexes now in 9th edition is that rather than having a stratagem that gives you a little buff to a HQ you've picked, you can spend points now to upgrade them. Obviously in the Space Marine Codex you get like Chapter Master, like like the main Librarian or the main Chaplain. What Grey Knights get is like an extra ability for spending points, and some of them are so cool. It's kind of a gift or a vision that they can have during the game. A couple that I've seen that I really like the look of. The first one, once per battle, when a friendly Grey Knights Corps, Grey Knights character unit within 12 inches of this model is selected to fire Overwatch, this model can experience this vision. If it does, then until the end of the phase, each time a model in that unit makes an Overwatch attack, a hit is scored on an unmodified roll of 4+. That on your Terminators.
Yeah, even
rapid
like
fire.
If someone's trying to go around your back flank and try and get your Purgation Squads, for example, you can get some cheeky 4+s on that.
So good. Another one is Presage Paralysis. Once per battle, at the start of your charge phase, if this model is on the battlefield, you can select one enemy unit on the battlefield. Until the end of the phase, that unit cannot fire Overwatch or set to defend. Tau are going to hate that.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Their crisis suits suddenly don't want your Paladins or your Terminators getting charged. And they're obviously going to stick back and try and Overwatch you, and just being able to do that. And I think that one only costs 15 points to your model.
It's really cheap and definitely worth it, especially, again, like you say, if you're facing someone like Tau, who is heavy shooting, definitely worth it.
Servant of the Throne, once per battle, when the bearer is selected as the target of an attack, it can use this gift. If it does, then until the end of that turn, the bearer has a 3+ invulnerable save.
Wow, that's extremely powerful, considering how 3+ invulns are really rare in this edition, so that's really good. Yeah, I mean, for me, on the Gifts of the Prescient, I like the Gem of Inoktu. Once per battle, when the bearer is selected to manifest psychic powers, you can use this gift. If you do, then until the end of the phase, each time the bearer attempts to manifest a psychic power from the Dominus discipline, add 2 to that attempt psychic test, which I think is pretty good. It's
So
helpful,
good.
especially, again, for something like Grey Knights, you know.
Yeah.
You want all the help you can get because you're going to be spamming them psychic powers.
I actually think in the whole of these, that's the best one. Like, that just makes psychic tests so powerful on a character.
Yeah.
And I just love it, that one.
Yeah,
So good.
I like it as well. I mean, to me, the Servant of the Throne is probably the most powerful. Just the ability
that's
to
true.
give, you know, something a 3+ invulnerable save, it can be really helpful.
I quite like this one as well, Severance Bolt. I'm not going to read the whole thing out because it's so long. But essentially, you can make a one-shot, and it can target a character this. If it hits, the target suffers D3 mortal wounds, and the attack sequence ends. If the target is a Psyker, you roll 3d6. If the result exceeds the target's leadership characteristic, randomly select one psychic power that model knows. That Psyker cannot use that psychic power for the rest of the battle. I just think that's so
really
good.
interesting.
That's
that
powerful.
one,
Yeah, it's so cool. And a lot of these aren't that expensive. Like, some of them are 15. I mean, that one Severance Bolt is 30. That's pretty much the top end.
Not even that much, though, is it really?
No, I just think that there's some really cool little situational things you can do here with these, and they're cool, you know.
Just a cool addition, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd definitely play them on a Grandmaster or on a Librarian, definitely.
Yeah.
Grey Knights do get their own litanies as well. Scott, you've got some interesting things about this, haven't you?
Yeah, so they all seem really strong, actually. They seem better than the Space Marine ones. So, ones to highlight, you got Words of Power. 6s cause a mortal wound on Nemesis weapons, which is pretty much every weapon in melee, and a lot of range stuff as well.
That is really good.
And that can synergize with Psychic Epitome Warlord trait, which gives you another mortal wound on a 6, so you could get 2 mortal wounds on 6s, which is insane.
You can stack these mortal wounds quite well, can't you?
Yeah.
And then you've got Psalm of Purity, grants an aura that gives you your 6s to wound, improves the AP by 1, and it's an aura ability, so you could stick him next to a Dreadknight or loads of guys and just have a little bubble.
Even just a Terminator squad, or
even just a
like
Terminator
that,
squad,
just to make their, for example, even just the basic Nemesis 4 sword, you can make that even more powerful.
Yeah.
But it's worth noting that these go off on a 3+, is that right?
They can only do it on a 3+, instead of being able to be buffed to a 2, like normal Codex Marines can.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, there's some really nice ones.
I think for these Psyker armies, it's good to have like a chaplain style model that can do, you know, like these buffs that aren't psychic.
Yeah, well, right there, I've mentioned one for melee and one for shooting.
Yeah,
that are massively improved.
It gives your opponent another thing to think about, because
you
could take a Psychic army and your opponent's going to think, oh, I'm going to take some. And like back in the day, it was those. I forget the name of the model, but there's a assassin model you can take for Imperium that is just anti-Psyker.
Is it the Colexus?
Yeah, and I think having the ability for litanies like this is it just gives yourself an option of knowing that something's got potential to go off.
Yeah.
That isn't reliant on you getting your psychic test done.
Yeah.
No, they look strong, and there is lots of things to talk about with stratagems and warlord traits, but I think because
we could be here all day talking about like how everything can link to something else,
and there's so many little things that we want to talk about with our top 5 that I think we're going to move straight on to that now.
Yeah.
Honourable mentions, we've got a couple here, mainly characters. The first one's Voldus, which I've talked quite a bit about.
Yep.
We've got Castellan Crow on here. I think his new model's amazing.
Sick model.
And there's a part of me that really did want him on the top 5, but I just think there's stronger things you could take. I still think you could take him, and he's a good like horde killer. He's got a lot of attacks. He can do that. He can do that Witchfire ability a bit easier. And yeah, I like as well if you take him as your warlord. His warlord trait gives him +1 to wound, which is decent.
He's obviously a good take. You know, I don't think people will be taking him on in tournaments, for example, because he's not super competitive, especially compared to Draigo, for example. But he's still quite a good choice.
Yeah. And then lastly, we had strike squads and purifier squads. They're good troop choice strike squads, and purifiers are nice if you want to take a veteran version of that. So,
yeah. Well, strike squads being 2 wounds now is helpful.
Yeah. So, do you want to kick us off with number 5, Ian? What have we got at number 5?
Yeah. So, obviously, this might be a bad take for some people, but I quite like the Purgation Squads, which I've mentioned a couple of times already in this podcast. I think you can do some pretty good stratagems to buff them up a bit.
Yeah.
So, for example, because they have deep strike, you can, for just 2 CP, you can use Sanctified Kill Zone, which gives them +1 to wound if they're within half range. Now, for me, that's pretty good if you can stack it with Death from the Warp for 1 CP as well, because it gives Psychers, when they're shooting, they get +1 to hit as well if they were set off from Teleport Strike. So my thought was, you bring them in Teleport Strike within half range of unit, you get +1 to hit and +1 to wound. So things like silencers, you know, they're only 1 damage, but the amount of shots you'll get from them anyway, and the ability to hit and wound even easier than what you normally get is pretty powerful, I think.
Yeah.
Obviously, incinerators are strong, Psy cannons are strong, but I quite like the idea of it on silencers, just for the amount of DACA you get from that.
Yeah. And like you said, with that stratagem, where they get +1 to wound within half range, it's pretty much 12-inch for half range on those, and you could you could teleport strike and use that, and they're gonna just rape.
Well, plus as well what you were saying before.
Rape, but I just did.
Plus what you're saying before as well. When you can Overwatch on falls.
Yeah.
If you put it on that as well, it's pretty good again, because you don't really have to worry as much about babysitting them, you know, because if someone's charging in on that unit, the ability to have all those shots anyway, hitting on 4s is pretty damn good.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I just, like you said, I just think like some of the little combinations with the gifts and the visions you can put on them.
Yeah.
Do an Overwatch on a 4+, and then you could use that Purgation Squad gets +1 to wound within half range.
Yeah.
And
probably not incinerators, because you need to be within 6 inches. That's probably a bit too close, because if you don't wipe the unit, and if it's a powerful combat unit, for example, they might get smacked up even with a 4+ to Overwatch.
Yeah, they'll
for
put
example.
out a lot of damage.
But the silencer and Psycannon are pretty solid options, I think, either way for that.
Okay, moving on. At number 4, we have the classic Grey Knight Brotherhood Terminators.
Yeah.
I think for troops now, they were good anyway, but with the extra wound, the extra attack, all the little things you can combine with the visions, with the stratagems, I just think for an objective secured choice, these are really strong.
Yeah. Do you feel like every time we do a top 5, if an army has Terminators in, it might actually always be in because of how good Terminators now are? Just in general, I think...
I agree. I think Terminators are a lot stronger now. I think Terminators in the game should always be a benchmark as a scary, like as an elite unit.
Yeah.
You don't want to come against Terminators, and at times, you know, even the Chaos Space Marine Terminators, you just kind of don't feel that scared about them. And I think we're starting to see with this extra wound, you know, Primaris, you have to get Gravis armor, don't you, for an extra wound.
Do you feel like because these Terminators are troops, you're going to forego taking the other troop options?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Just for the better save and everything like that. It's, you know, it's...
I think there is a shout for strike squads, but I think... And one thing that I spoke to you about, Ian, is the fact that a couple of editions ago, Paladins were like super strong. They had some insane things they could do. They had way more attacks. And looking at it now, you know, they are better, but they've become like a kind of bodyguard command veteran version of just normal Terminators, haven't they, Paladins?
Yeah, there used to be a bigger difference, obviously, when you could take the Apothecary and stuff, in the Paladin squad. Now you have to take them separately because it's a separate character. They're not quite as good because they're a bigger points investment, which they were never cheap anyway.
I do quite like that you can just take 3 now, though.
Yeah, we were talking about
cool.
off podcast. We were talking about that before, anyway, saying how if you took a squad of 3, you could take the Apothecary and the Ancient, and it'd still be a good unit.
Yeah.
But I think normal Terminators now are pretty strong.
Yeah.
One thing I do quite like, especially we just quickly talk about that, is Hammer Hand. So it's only Warp Charge 5. It allows you first of all to reroll wounds in melee, which is good. You can use that on strike squads, Terminators, and Dreadknights, for example, but if you use the mental focus stratagem, you could use that and also get Symphonic Strike, which is +1 attack. So you could stack them both together. So not only are you getting an extra attack. So I think normal base Terminators would be. I think they would have maybe 5 attacks.
3 Terminator troop choices.
So they got base 3, so you could give them 4 attacks each, and obviously the rerolling wounds as well. I think that's quite powerful on the Terminator squad.
Yeah,
really strong.
So good. In at 3, quite an interesting choice. We've gone for the Librarian, and a reason for this is I just think Librarians in your Grey Knights army can just be such good support units. They've got loads of access to cool relics, all the psychic powers, and I think the reason we've got them so high is that if you're taking a beat stick HQ, like a Grandmaster or one of the characters, your Librarian is there just to kind of be the one that your opponent might forget about.
It's just like a support unit, isn't it, really, to help buff up your beat stick units.
Plus having like the new limits with like 1 captain per like detachment, you're going to probably have to take one anyway.
Yeah. And they've got some cool relics. They've got access to the Fury of Deimos, which is a Stormbolter, and it's rapid 3, strength 5, -2 AP and 2 damage.
Yeah.
And that's gonna just anything, like
it's
even
quite,
Plague Marines.
Quite a good little turret, that.
Yeah, I mean rapid fire 3.
Yeah.
6 at 12 inch. Oh no, actually it's a Terminator, isn't it? Terminator Librarian with that.
Will be full range.
Yeah.
6 shots.
You'd just take a Terminator Librarian anyway. I don't see the reason why you wouldn't.
Yeah, they've got access to, like, they can upgrade their weapons. Each time a Deny the Witch test is taken for the bearer, if the result of the test was an unmodified result of 8+, or is greater than the result of the psychic test, that Deny the Witch test is passed.
So that's Sanctic Shard.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
They've got a Librarian model only relic. The bearer gains the following ability: Artisan Nullifier Matrix. While a friendly Grey Knight Psychic unit is within 9 inches of this model, each time a Psychic test is taken for that unit, it does not suffer perils of the warp.
Yeah,
I think that's quite nice.
The Sanctic Shard is good because if you're facing Big Daddy Magnus, he can't even deny certain psychic powers that you cast if you cast them higher, 8 or higher, which a lot of the good psychic powers are 8 or higher anyway. So, to have it undeniable is pretty powerful, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was Vortex of Doom always a psychic power for them?
Yeah.
No, so it's brand new.
A lot of the psychic powers
seems really strong.
Yeah, they've kind of been reworded.
So this is select a unit, closest unit within 12 inches. It suffers 2d3 mortal wounds, and every unit within 3 inches suffers 1, which is just super strong. And it also says if this model has the Psychic Epitome Warlord trait, it obviously works with that, but it doesn't give the extra mortal wound to the 3-inch units. But 2d3 plus 1 mortal wound potentially.
Yeah. Another little thing I like about the Librarian is that they naturally get a Psychic Hood.
Yeah.
So within 12 inches they get +1 to their denies. With the Grey Knights Chapter Tactic, they get +2.
Oh yeah,
that's good.
So I think they're not the first thing in your list.
Yeah.
But if you want a support HQ, I think it's the choice. I think it's better than a Chaplain. I think it's better than a Brother Captain. In at number 2,
we've got the Grandmaster Dreadknight, Big Daddy Dreadknight.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's an absolute beast on his own. But There's one relic which a couple of people have said is a really strange and hilarious relic to use. It's called the Sigil of Exigence. So once per game, when the bearer is chosen as the target of a ranged attack, you can immediately redeploy them anywhere on the battlefield more than 9 inches away from the enemy. And if they're no longer a legal target, the opponent can retarget their attacks. So, obviously, it's still alright for your opponent because they can still shoot another unit, but it's so funny that you can just have this Grandmaster Dreadnought just deep striking in, taking something like taking one of your opponent's really powerful units out in combat, for example, and then when the opponent points the guns at him on their turn, he just dissipates away, just like
it's one use only as well. But I think it's also fun as well. Like it'd be really fun just completely moving from one side of the board to the other, and just be like, right, I'm leaving you all over there.
loads of people take this. I'm pretty sure. Obviously, if you're taking a Grandmaster Dreadknight, like, you're going to use this at least, probably every battle you have.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason like we had this so high when we were looking at the Grandmaster and the Dreadknight, they're good themselves. So you would take those naturally, and then when you combine it to make a Grandmaster Dreadknight, it's like Power Rangers on overload.
Yeah.
Like it just makes everything that's good about a Grandmaster and everything that's good about a Dreadknight just super better.
It's Power Rangers morphed, mate. That's what
it is. And I think it'd be really cool to run a list that is you've got a Grandmaster Dreadknight HQ, and then you've got 2 Dreadknights, or maybe even 3, in your heavy slot, and you've just got an army of Dreadknights and just loads of Terminators. I just think that would be really actually quite scary.
Yeah, that would be scary.
Do you know what? That would be good if you use the Sword Bearers Brotherhood as well. If you're having that many vehicles, you'd probably be better taking that.
And one thing I like about Dreadknights now, in general, not just the Grandmaster Dreadknight, but all Dreadknights, is their invulnerable save's gone up to 4+.
Yeah, that's really good.
That's so good.
You don't even need to chuck Sanctity.
Yeah, you don't need to use it on
anymore like you used to have to. Now they've just got 4+ invuns base, which is amazing.
I think they're going to be really frustrating to fight, and you can give. I mean, Grandmasters, you can give them loads of relics, but there are certain relics that are for the Grandmaster Dreadknight. And I just think it's a strong choice.
Yeah, really strong.
So I was thinking you could potentially use Servants of the Throne, which is the one where you can give it a 3+ invulnerable save. So, you could give a 3+ invulnerable save to a Grandmaster Dreadknight for a turn. Anyway.
Yeah.
So that's pretty strong.
And speaking of Grandmasters, in at number 1, we've got the Granddaddy himself.
The Slayer of Mortarion himself, Kaldor Draigo.
Yeah. Wow. I think Kaldor, he's gone down points as well.
Has he?
Yeah.
He's an absolute beast, man.
Yeah, he's so good. He was good anyway, but I just think one of the reasons I really like him is, and we haven't really had a chance to talk too much about Warlord traits, but all of the Warlord traits have either been reworded or they've been completely rewritten.
Yeah.
Draigo's just got a really strong one. I mean, it's a little situational, but if you're coming against Be'lakor, having Draigo in your army is a good way of combating Be'lakor or any greater demon. And I imagine if it says against a demon keyword unit, I'm sure this would work on a Primarch.
He's just going to slap
up. Is this the one
up
to ignore the invulnerable,
Yeah, I'm sure that would work on Mortarion, wouldn't it?
So this works on demon Primarchs.
So Draigo is a kind of anti-demon hunter, really. And even against Primarchs like Mortarion.
Yeah. This is one of the best Warlord traits to give anyway. Even if you've not got Draigo.
Each time this Warlord fights, if it made a charge move this turn, then until the fight is resolved, add 1 to its attacks characteristic. Each time this Warlord makes a melee attack against a demon unit, invulnerable saving throws cannot be made against that attack. So you're fighting against Mortarion and suddenly it's 4+ invulnerable save. Is not going off. And it's so good that.
It's
so
very powerful.
Good.
I mean, like we were saying earlier on in the podcast, it's niche because obviously it's demon army dependent, but for someone like Mortarion, who himself is a flying tank on his own, for Kaldor Draigo just to deep strike in and slap him up.
6 attacks.
Yeah.
He's strength 8, -4 AP and 3 damage.
Yeah, the Titan Sword is
Yeah, it's
definitely a demon killer.
Yeah, and it's
Maybe 7 attacks with the trait.
Yeah, and
charge.
there was a Warlord trait I actually really, really want to talk about, so I'm going to psych it.
Epitome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the start of each of your psychic phases, select one friendly Grey Knight psychic unit within 6 of this Warlord. Till the end of that phase, each time the unit manifests a Witch Fire psychic power. When resolving that psychic power, if an enemy unit suffers any mortal wounds, that enemy unit suffers 1 additional mortal wound.
Yeah.
That would be so good on a
so many nice ways to just stack mortal wounds.
Any HQ, that'd be so good. But just back to Draigo, I mean, I think we've kind of gone over like some of his uses. That in terms of the Codex, he's probably the strongest character. 3+ invulnerable save as well.
Yeah.
Tasty.
He's not. I don't think he's too expensive. He's got chapter master abilities, and he gives out rites of battle as well. Teleport him. He knows 2 psychic powers and can attempt to deny 2 in your opponent's phase. I just think he's a really strong character now.
Yeah, he's a really powerful beat stick. I mean, he always has been really, but I think even more so.
Yeah. Well, strength 8, -4 AP, 3 damage, 7 attacks on the charge is amazing.
Yeah, he's good, and I think he deserves his slot at number 1. Is there anything anyone would like to add?
Well, obviously, if people think differently, then please say so in the comments, and please list what you think
what your
is,
top 5 is.
what your top 5 is and why, basically.
I think out of the top 5s that we've done so far, this has been one of the harder ones, mainly because Grey Knights don't have a lot of units.
Yeah.
And a lot of their units that you would take that are quite generic, like the Flyers or the Rhinos or the Land Raiders, they aren't any better than the ones in the Space Marine Codex.
Yeah. Probably worse, really.
The things that we've chosen are all stratagem, warlord trait, litany. They're all getting like massively buffed, and relics massively buffed by those things.
Yeah, and I think looking at it, like they have a shout now for the best Terminators. I think them and Dark Angel Terminators are really strong. I think they've got the best Librarian in the game. Yeah. I don't think you get a better Librarian in the Space Marine Codex than this one. I mean, just that, it's pretty much got a 2 to deny.
Yeah.
That's so good. And it's got some cool little relics. Great. Anything?
Cool.
Would you recollect them, Iain? Are you tempted?
Well, I've already got 3 armies, haven't I? It's,
Yeah, but mate,
got so much to paint, mate.
Yeah, what about 4?
40k is never over.
It's alright, Ben will get them.
Sigh. Probably, yeah. I just love the models, and they were my first love,
Yeah. Okay. Forget about collecting them. Just hypothetically, if you were looking at them right now and thinking, right, I'm going to get them and I'm going to make them as strong as I can, what route would you go down?
Yeah, if you had 500 quid to spend on an army right now.
Forget about the money. Just think about like what do you think is their best
what is the funnest thing for you? Yeah.
Again, like I said before, like the Nemesis Dreadknight, so definitely get one of them to make a Grandmaster Dreadknight.
Would you run 4?
No, I probably won't run 4. I'd probably go.
Money's no object to you.
I'd definitely take Draigo, Grandmaster Dreadknight. I'm definitely leaning towards Terminators in the true choice. 3
Terminator squads.
Yeah. I would probably have at least 1 or 2 extra Dreadknights. I don't think I'd take 3 unless I took something like the Sword Bearer Brotherhood, for extra benefits to vehicles, like I've said earlier.
Yep.
If I was going to do that, then that could be made quite powerful. But I honestly don't know what to buy because, everything's had quite a good buff.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be, back when I used to play them, for example, when I had them in 7th, there were certain units that were powerful.
Yeah.
But quite a bit of it was pretty poor.
Yeah.
Now everything's looking pretty damn good.
I feel like it's a really nice, balanced, rounded army book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, James, one thing I want to ask, having delved into Thousand Suns and Grey Knights, which do you think at this stage, in your opinion, is more powerful?
Who's going to say Thousand Suns?
It's actually a really hard answer.
Yeah, I think it would be hard.
And I sort of mentioned this before, is that these 2 books feel like mirrors of each other.
Yeah,
they feel like 2 sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
And I'm actually really happy about that because, in the Imperium, the best psychic army is Grey Knights.
Yeah.
And in Chaos, the best psychers are the Thousand Sons.
Yeah.
So the fact that there's two armies now that kind of mirror each other in different ways, I would say this is a more defensive, counter-attacking psychic army, whereas Thousand Sons is a very aggressive psychic army.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Grey Knights, obviously, they look very powerful as well, offensively, but I think compared to Thousand Sons, at least psychically, they are more defensive, and Thousand Sons are more offensive.
They're going to stop you from performing your psychic abilities and also do some really good psychic themselves.
I'm glad that these two codexes came out at the exact same time, because they feel balanced within each other.
Yeah, they do.
And like, imagine if one of them came out 6 months from now, it would have loads of things that would counter the old one, and the old one wouldn't have anything to counter the new one. Because of the way they write it.
I do feel like they've wrote them both at the same time, and they've been swapping notes, like, we'll put this in here, that'll counter you. And I just like the fact that their standard rule, Thousand Sons get +1 to cast, and Grey Knights get +1 to deny, and I just think
sums it up really.
They've got a lot of similarities, but they both play in different ways. Like, I think you would go more tanks with Grey Knights, find a more fun time more there.
Vehicles,
Whereas you could go with some rubric squads and then just hoard a few Zangor units in there and have like a kind of like, I mean, you've got to take rubrics or terminators now with Thousand Sons if you want to take
Zangors,
the horde side, but you can still do it.
Yeah, I think what you're both saying is true, really, in terms of because they brought both the codexes out at the same time, they both balance each other. It doesn't feel like a codex creep like what we've been previously having, which Ninth was sort of edging towards, because they both come out.
Yeah.
They are quite similar to each other in certain ways, which I do I like a lot.
Yeah. I don't think either book comes out, and a bit like Drukhari was, where that came out and everyone was suddenly ridiculous. Like, wow, this is the best codex.
Yeah.
I don't feel like that with these two. I just feel like they have a say now. And that if you collect one of these armies, you're not going to come up to games night and feel like, oh, wow, he's got Death Guard and my Grey Knights are going to get a bit battered now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing that was talked about in Thousand Sons was how good Magnus is. Magnus went down in points and got better.
Yeah.
But actually, Draigo is so good.
Draigo could take Magnus down.
Yeah.
You could really take him on,
Grey Knights is a bit of a counter-attacking army. Draigo's the perfect counter-attack to a Demon Primarch now.
Yeah.
Because you put him on the field, and if I had Mortarion or Magnus, I'd be like, oh no, like he can teleport right next to me at any moment, really, with some of the psychic powers.
I think, like, being a Death Guard player myself, if I knew I was fighting Grey Knights, I might not even bother with Mortarion if I knew they were bringing Draigo.
Yeah.
Because it's like,
it's your Achilles
he's got
heel.
a direct counter to me. Maybe I should use my points somewhere else.
Yeah.
For me, it's sort of like that meme, instead of like Magnus being the boss that's going to take everyone out, I can just imagine Draigo like teleporting in next to Magnus, and they look at each other, and then Draigo just shouts, "Call an ambulance, but not for me!" and then slaps Magnus down with the Titan sword.
Yeah.
One thing I did want to ask you, Ian, is you've obviously looked at some of the stuff now for Thousand Sons. They are like your mortal enemy. I know you hate them. How do you feel about some of their new stuff? Like, if you were playing them, would you feel like they've got certain things now that would scare you, or do you feel like you could have them in your back pocket?
I won't be able to have them in my back pocket. I like the fact that they've got buffs now, because they did need it. It was too much of a one-sided thing. I remember when I played Ben a while ago with my Wolves against his Thousand Sons, and I just battered him, and I felt pretty bad after it. Obviously, I do get some benefits fighting Thousand Sons in melee.
Yeah.
But overall, I think it's going to be quite an even matchup. Like you said before, I'm better in combat, definitely, but they're better in psychic and shooting, I would say. Yeah. So if I can't quickly make it into combat and shut their units down, I'm getting battered.
Yeah.
And especially, actually, with the ability for, is it rubrics that they can heroically intervene? That sort of
they
rule?
can. Yeah, they got like a bodyguard strategy.
Near Magnus, is it?
Yeah.
So that is...
No, I think it's just near a character.
Near Thousand Sons characters.
Yeah, I can't remember, but I just remember it being like, What?
Grey Knights don't have anything like that, do they?
No,
that I can
but
see.
one thing I was just thinking of while you were talking was one thing that's really cool with Thousand Suns is their power swords have got damage 2 now. They've got their own power sword, but we haven't really spoke about it much today, is that Grey Knights' force weapons, the Nemesis weapons, have all gone up to 2 damage.
Yeah.
We've definitely not spoke about Thousand Suns a lot, guys.
No. You'd love it.
You know, is it a lot of people listening to this will be like, you know,
is this a Thousand Suns
Codex
review?
Like, I thought they were talking about Grey Knights here. They're talking about Thousand Suns almost as much. I mean, obviously
they are a mirror of each other. So you talk about one, you talk about the other.
Once again, mate, that's heretical opinions.
Yeah.
You know, seriously, there's going to be an exterminatus launched on you.
I do want to say that Grey Knights, though, like if you were just getting into 40k today and you'd like the look of them, you like their kind of medieval theme, and you wanted to cast powers, they're a perfect army to start with.
I think it's even the fact that if you just want a small army, you don't necessarily want a huge marine army. What you can get, you just want a nice small force which is powerful in itself and can do everything quite well.
Yeah,
you know, for something like that, it's a good choice.
And I know a lot of people want new models for them, but I think some of their old kits still hold up. I think their Terminators are beautiful.
I was surprised that they didn't get any Primaris, to be honest with you.
I think an update to the Strike Squad would have been welcomed. I think that you could have done a lot with that. They,
just
true
scale them a bit more.
Yeah.
But they're still squatty a bit, but I
think
they look cool.
The Dreadknight and the Terminators look great.
Yeah, definitely. But they're like, you know, the Dreadknights, I think it's a slightly newer unit than the Strike Squads, isn't it? And the Terminators.
So Crow, even though he's got a new model and he's noticeably bigger, he isn't actually Primaris, is he? He's just hasn't got the Primaris keyword. So that gives me hope for them updating them and not.
I think one day you will get like new Grey Knight models in the net. I feel a little bit like with Games Workshop recently. Everyone always talks about how they have they're 3 years ahead.
Yeah.
I don't really know where they're going with things. I feel like for a time it was very much we're updating Primaris and then we're going to get into 9th. And then since we've got to 9th, I don't know where it is kind of moving now.
Yeah.
But I do think one day in the next 5-10 years you'll get bigger sized Grey Knights.
I hope so.
And I'd say to anyone, like, if you want to collect them, but you're waiting for that, like, you might be waiting a while.
Yeah,
so
I wouldn't wait.
I would get into them now. I think their codex is a lot of fun, and
definitely.
I've never really wanted Grey Knights, but I've looked at this book. I love the cover.
Yeah.
The purple is just so good.
One of the better covers. Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Sweet.
Well, it's been great to chat all about Grey Knights.
A Thousand Suns.
Been good to dissect it.
Yeah,
I mean, personally, I quite like talking about the wand makers. Ollivander was very happy that we were talking about making wands. You know, Hogwarts Brotherhood is proud.
Yeah. What house do you think Kaldor Draigo would have been in? Gryffindor.
Yeah, he's a bit of a nerd, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he's very brave, obviously taking Primarchs on everything. But I mean, he's been in the warp for like hundreds of years, I'm pretty sure, battling demons constantly.
Voldus would be Hufflepuff because he's loyal to a T.
Listen, don't you slay Hufflepuff, mate.
He would. Good. Okay, guys. Well, really good to chat. Have we got any hobby updates?
Hobby updates?
Yeah, I feel like we should do a little hobby update.
I'm painting Death Guard at the minute. I've nearly finished 2 more Blight Lords. I'm halfway through a Plague Surgeon. I've nearly finished a Tallyman and halfway through Plague Caster as well.
Sounds good.
I've done a lot actually recently.
I haven't had a chance. I've been too busy with these reviews. Like Games Workshop putting out 2 books on the same day, man. Like trying to get them out has been actually quite hard.
As you can probably tell, he's been reading quite a lot on the Thousand Suns. You know,
I'd actually agree with that. No, I've read a lot on Grey Knights this last few days, and it has tempted me. How about you, Ian? Have you been working on anything?
Yeah, I've recently painted some Wolfguard Terminators. Nice. And I did my Thunderwolf Cavalry and the Wolf Lord and Thunderwolf as well. I'm currently just started painting up some Assault Intercessors and 3 more Blade Guard to go with the 3 I've already painted. Only just started though, obviously.
Yeah, they look cool. Yeah, that'll be good. Good. Well, been great to chat with you guys.
Yeah.
And I look forward to the next time.
Yeah.
Yeah. See you later, boys.
Cheers for listening, guys.
See you later.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.